Have you ever opened your fridge and found food that looked fine only a few days ago suddenly becoming wilted, soggy, or forgotten? Scandinavian households often treat the refrigerator as an organized system rather than simply a cold place to store groceries. Small habits around temperature, placement, containers, and shopping can help food stay useful for longer. These routines can also reduce the amount of food that quietly ends up in the bin. The goal isn't complicated storage gadgets, but simple habits that make everyday food easier to see, use, and preserve. If you enjoy practical Scandinavian home habits, subscribe to Habit Archive for more simple ideas that can make everyday life easier. An overloaded refrigerator makes it harder to see what food is actually inside. Scandinavian households often leave enough open space for air to circulate and shelves to remain visible. When food isn't buried behind other containers, it is less likely to be forgotten. Clear shelves also make it easier to notice what needs using first. A fridge doesn't need to be packed to be useful. Sometimes a little empty space helps everything work better. Not every part of the fridge stays at exactly the same temperature. Scandinavian households often place different foods where they are most likely to stay fresh. Dairy, leftovers, produce, and other groceries are given their own practical zones. This prevents the refrigerator from becoming one large mixed storage space. When everything has a logical place, it is also easier to put groceries away correctly. Good organization makes freshness easier to maintain. Some foods are refrigerated simply because people assume colder is always better. In reality, certain fruits, vegetables, and pantry foods can lose quality when stored too cold. Scandinavian kitchens often separate foods according to what actually benefits from refrigeration. That keeps the refrigerator from becoming unnecessarily crowded. It also helps preserve the texture and flavor of foods that prefer room temperature storage. The right storage place can matter as much as the temperature itself. Leftovers become much easier to use when you can immediately see what is inside. Clear containers make forgotten food harder to overlook. They also stack neatly and keep shelves more organized. Instead of opening several opaque boxes to find one meal, everything is visible at a glance. That makes leftovers more likely to be eaten before they spoil. Good containers can improve both organization and food use. Leftovers shouldn't simply sit out for a long time while the kitchen cools around them. Scandinavian households can make cooling and storing leftovers part of the normal cooking routine. Once food is ready for safe refrigeration, it is transferred into suitable containers. This keeps meals organized and ready for later use. It also prevents unfinished pots and dishes from becoming forgotten on the counter. A simple routine helps leftovers become tomorrow's meal instead of tomorrow's waste. Moisture can make fresh produce deteriorate faster, especially when vegetables are stored wet. Scandinavian kitchens often keep produce as dry as practical before putting it away. Simple paper towels or breathable storage can help manage excess moisture. This is especially useful for leafy greens and delicate vegetables. A little attention when unpacking groceries can extend their useful life. Keeping produce dry is a small habit with a noticeable payoff. Washing every fruit and vegetable the moment it enters the house can sometimes shorten how long it stays fresh. Scandinavian food routines often consider when produce will actually be used. Items that do not need immediate washing can stay dry until closer to preparation. This keeps unnecessary moisture away from the food. Produce is then cleaned when it is needed. Simple timing can make storage more effective. Some households make older food difficult to see because newer groceries keep getting placed in front. Scandinavian kitchens can avoid this by keeping foods that need using sooner in an obvious position. Leftovers and aging produce are brought forward where they are easy to notice. This turns the refrigerator into a visual reminder of what should be eaten next. Nothing has to be labeled in a complicated way. Simply seeing the food first can prevent unnecessary waste. Food waste often begins before the groceries even enter the home. Scandinavian households can check what is already in the refrigerator before buying more. This prevents duplicate purchases and keeps meals connected to what needs using. Shopping becomes more deliberate when the fridge is treated as part of the plan. A quick look can save both food and money. The best storage system starts with buying the right amount. Date labels are useful, but not not every item becomes useless the exact moment a printed date arrives. Scandinavian households can combine labels with appearance, smell, and proper food safety judgment. Foods are checked rather than automatically discarded without thought. This can prevent unnecessary waste when food is still suitable. At the same time, obviously spoiled food is removed immediately. Practical judgment matters alongside the label. Fresh herbs can disappear surprisingly quickly when they are simply thrown into the refrigerator. Scandinavian kitchens often give delicate herbs more thoughtful storage. Keeping them suitably hydrated, protected, or dry depending on the herb can help maintain freshness. This makes small bunches last longer. Herbs are also easier to notice when they are stored neatly. A little care can save a surprising amount of waste. Freezing can be one of the easiest ways to save food that won't be eaten soon enough. Scandinavian households can freeze bread, leftovers, and suitable ingredients before they lose quality. Portions are stored in useful amounts rather than one giant frozen block. This makes future meals much easier to plan. Freezing turns "we won't finish this" into "we can use it later." It is a simple way to make food last longer. Soft berries can spoil quickly when they are left wet, crowded, or forgotten at the back of the fridge. Scandinavian households often handle delicate fruit gently and keep it easy to see. Excess moisture is avoided when practical. Berries are also used sooner rather than saved for a vague future snack. A visible container makes them easier to remember. Fragile foods usually benefit from being seen and used quickly. A dirty refrigerator can make fresh food harder to store and unpleasant to handle. Scandinavian kitchens often use small cleaning routines instead of waiting for a major deep clean. Spills are wiped up quickly. Old containers are removed regularly. Shelves stay easier to organize when mess doesn't have time to build. A clean refrigerator makes good storage much easier. Saving leftovers is useful, but keeping the same container untouched for too long defeats the purpose. Scandinavian households often bring older leftovers into the meal plan quickly. If something is clearly not going to be eaten, keeping it longer doesn't create value. Older food is either used, frozen appropriately, or discarded responsibly. This keeps the refrigerator moving instead of becoming storage for forgotten meals. Leftovers work best when they have a plan. Dairy products are easy to forget when they are buried behind larger containers. Scandinavian households often keep frequently used dairy items where they are easy to notice. This makes breakfast and cooking routines faster. It also reduces the chance that products sit untouched until they spoil. Visibility matters almost as much as organization. Food that is easy to see is easier to remember. Another useful habit is grouping ingredients according to how they will actually be used. Foods for breakfast, lunch, and dinner can be easier to find when the refrigerator makes sense visually. This reduces the time spent searching through shelves. It can also make meal preparation feel more automatic. Organized food is easier to turn into organized meals. A little planning at the fridge door can save time all week. Fresh food is wonderful, but buying too much of it can create waste surprisingly quickly. Scandinavian households can avoid this by considering how much produce the family will realistically use. Smaller amounts can be replenished more often. This keeps food fresher and prevents the refrigerator from becoming overcrowded. Buying less can sometimes mean enjoying ingredients at their best. Freshness starts with realistic shopping. Leftovers don't always have to be reheated in exactly the same form. Scandinavian households can turn yesterday's ingredients into soups, salads, sandwiches, or simple new meals. This makes leftovers feel like ingredients rather than unwanted food. It also reduces the temptation to cook something completely different. A little creativity can stretch one meal much further. The refrigerator becomes a resource instead of a place where old food waits. A quick refrigerator check can prevent small problems from becoming forgotten food. Scandinavian households can use a simple weekly reset to see what needs eating, freezing, or replacing. This keeps the fridge aligned with the household's upcoming meals. It also reduces last-minute grocery decisions. A few minutes of planning can save food, money, and time. The fridge works best when it is part of the weekly routine. Bread can lose its texture surprisingly quickly when it is stored in the wrong place. Scandinavian kitchens often keep bread in a cool, dry environment rather than letting it sit exposed on the counter. For bread that won't be eaten soon, freezing can also prevent unnecessary waste. Slices can be stored in practical portions, so only what is needed has to be removed. This keeps bread from becoming stale before the household has time to finish it. A simple storage habit can make an everyday staple last much longer. Serving too much food at once can create leftovers that nobody planned to keep. Scandinavian households can start with sensible portions and add more when someone is still hungry. This is especially useful for foods that don't store well after serving. Smaller portions also make it easier to see what the household actually eats. Over time, that can improve both shopping decisions and meal planning. Serving realistically is another simple way to prevent food from being wasted. A well-organized refrigerator is not really about having the perfect containers or the fanciest appliance. It is about knowing what you have, storing it sensibly, and using it before it becomes waste. Small habits like keeping food visible, planning realistic purchases, and making space for older items can change the way the whole kitchen works. They also make everyday cooking easier because ingredients are easier to find and meals are easier to plan. You don't have to copy every habit at once. Start with one change that makes sense for your own kitchen. And once the fridge becomes easier to manage, you'll probably notice that wasting less food becomes much easier too.